What it requires is a dive into the unknown over and over and over and over and over again. That's kind of what an artist has signed up for. If we want to look at it the traditional sense, an artist has signed up to create all of these different works, and each one is an unknown. At some point in time, it is an unknown, and it's a willingness to keep going back to that place.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte.
Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles,
so that you can claim your own path
and make your life a work of art. All settled in there, Brandon?
I am settled in. Real nice.
Yeah, real nice. Squish into these chairs. Buckle up. Because here we go.
Yeah.
This one's all about play.
Yeah.
The law of play.
It's a law.
Which almost
doesn't seem right.
It seems like the law of play.
What?
No. It works as if you could look at play as being, as with all the laws, they're not laws as in like you must obey. They're laws as in like forces. They're forces. I'm not going to try and play around with it too much.
Nature.
Forces of nature.
They're like principles. They're like guidelines, you know?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And the one with play is got all kinds of room to monkey around with.
It really does.
And like so many of these laws that we've talked about, we first start out like, because we've written a bunch of these out, but then we have a little pre-chat about what we're going to talk about. And we're like, okay, yeah, let's do play. That'll be a good one. That feels right today. And we're saying, all right, let's explore it a little bit more, kind of navigate, see where that could potentially open up.
Mm-hmm.
And then realizing that this was a much bigger law than we thought it was. Yeah. Although it's not totally surprising to me. Like, I'm somewhat surprised, but not that surprised at the same time. But I would wager saying that this is actually one of the master laws. And we were saying that it's kind of sneaky, which in that way, which seems about appropriate for the law of play.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we started talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, the law of play. Like, it's kind of like you have some fun. You like, you try things out, whatever, right? It's like, that's not really that big of a thing, but it's important. And then we started to get into it, and it was like, wait a minute, play is like the way you do things, and this is the way of the artist. It's like in the title, like we could even call this the play of the artist, because play is so much about the give and the flexibility and the openness and the various ways in which you can go down the journey. And that's so much of what we're talking about. We're talking about the journey of you as an artist, as a human being, as a person that has, your own sense of going through life. And life is, in what we're starting to discover, is a play. Like, it's not like a play you necessarily put on stage so much, but like it's something that you play around with and find out. Because we didn't get a handbook when we were born. And the only way we figure out what we call a handbook today is really just people who played around and tried some stuff and went, hey, that kind of worked.
Yeah.
But then we get stuck on that.
Yes.
And that's where we start to not play anymore.
Yes. And I mean, and play has so much to do with our imaginations. And yeah, you make an excellent point that play is pretty much how even, and I was just reading something about this earlier this morning. I'm reading this a Dan Millman book that I haven't read.
What, you haven't read?
Yeah, called it's called the Four Purposes.
Okay,
I believe, but he was talking a little bit about this idea of intuition, and I see how that kind of plays into it. And he's saying, even most of great scientific discoveries kind of just happened out of like out of the blue. Almost, they just kind of like happened from, in essence, what we're talking about, playing around, trying out some different ideas, and then that eureka moment, which is part of why, Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge, because the knowledge will only take you to what we already know. So it's
think we know.
Or think we know.
Yeah.
So how do we attain something new? How do we move forward? How do we make new discoveries?
We play, goddammit.
And we play. And I think one of the big laws there's a lot of laws that are related to play. But one of the big ones in here is the unknown, which we talked about not too long ago. I can't remember, it was not too long ago. But we talked about the unknown, and play is really kind of like the navigation tool. It's like, how do you, in the best possible way, how do you navigate the unknown? Because there's the choice of you step into the unknown, which normally freaks us out, and you can just have a complete meltdown, panic attack, and just shut down, and that's no good. Play is kind of the thing you want to bring into the unknown, which gives you a weird set of tools, I guess, like a really flexible set of tools to be like, all right, well, try this, try that. And also at the same time being like, and don't take it too seriously, right? Like you're gonna fuck up.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some things that aren't gonna work in here, but that's part of the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, play is a learning tool. I mean, that's what kids use to figure things out, and
it's all kids really know how to do.
Yeah. And they, adults kind of get in the way because adults, at least in our current climate culture, is like adults think that they know how things should be done and the way things should be used and whatever. And, the worst thing an adult can do is come in and tell a child how something works, how to use it, how to do it, if the child has never had a sense to play with it. Because children will find all different types of uses for a simple little thing, right? And, if they don't know what its use is for, they might do all sorts of neat things to try and use it or play with it or do something else. And the thing is that, when you think you know something, you've just limited your options. You've stopped your possibility of trying to basically do something different. And they say that creative geniuses are people who have retained their childlike heart. They have the ability to use something in an unfamiliar, unknown, uncommon way. And that's what makes them seem like geniuses. But really all they were willing to do is they were willing to try.
Yeah.
And then they went, hey, look at this. This thing actually can do something if I kind of do it this way. It's like, well, how'd you figure that out? It's like, well, sometimes you hear these, like, I don't know if you ever have hung around like mechanics or people who do like mechanical stuff, and it's like they do something which isn't with like a normal tool, or they do it with something else, and you're like, how'd you figure out to do that? It's like, well, I didn't have the tool. I didn't have the hammer, the wrench, the whatever. Yeah. And so then,
well, it's like, even we have, the expression, I was just like, oh, I MacGyvered it. It's like this whole thing.
MacGyver's like the ultimate play.
Yeah, he's like the ultimate adult playing, although in a very tense situation. Yeah. But actually, if we get into like this big philosophical chat about MacGyver, that's hilarious. Yeah. But here we go. We'll see. But no, like MacGyver actually kind of illustrates in many ways a brilliant adult at play.
Yeah.
Because it's like, all right, the stakes are so high. It's life and death for MacGyver almost constantly. Yeah. And what does he do? It's not like, okay, we need to find a rigid. No, MacGyver starts playing. Yeah. He looks around and he's like, what can we do?
We got a hanger. I got some tape. I got a piece of gum. It's like, yeah, totally.
Let's do it. Let's blow this wall open or something, And but that's play. Like that's a creative mind that's playing with different ideas. What can we do here? What can we do there? And that was one of the things we had kind of talked about, because we always like to try and pose some kind of a question in here.
Yeah.
And what we sort of developed with play was that it's like, well, where are you hitting a roadblock? Where are you stuck in your life? Whether that's, something in your own personal life, or that's something in your work or your career, something that's just stuck. And play is a brilliant tool that helps us to get out of any rigid formations, ideas, that kind of thing, to find new solutions, because problem solving is actually a form of play. We just call it problem solving, which isn't very exciting. But if we started to look at problem solving more as play solving, like we might be able to have just kind of change our mind, make sometimes like that process a little bit less painful, because sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to problem solve.
Yeah, totally.
Why doesn't this just work? It's just like, well, play with it.
Yeah. So the question we posed, right, was, do you have any roadblocks in your life? So let's just stop for a second, just ask anybody who's even listening, do you have any roadblocks in your life? Because this law is going to help you. This law is actually in many ways going to help you solve it, figure it out, work it out, and you might actually find out something really cool about yourself using the law of play. The law of play is such a powerful tool, as we talked about, because really what it gives you is it gives you the ability to do things that maybe even others aren't even able or aware of to do. And it's so cutting edge, too, in a lot of ways, because when you problem solve with play, when you use this to get around roadblocks and to figure out new options and new ways to do something, what ends up happening is you might create, as a business, you might create an entirely new market. You might open up a totally proprietary business doing this. As an actor, you might be able to find a way to interact with your scene partner in a way where it opens up the scene in a way that you never thought was possible. As a filmmaker, you might be able to capture something. You guys are starting to get the idea, right? Mm-hmm. Play gives you a way of looking outside of what is normally done and doing something that, is new, is different, is a new option. And I think, just to tie this back in, this is way of the artist. What's your way? Mm-hmm. How do you want to play? So if you don't incorporate play into your game, you're missing out on so much, because, I think the big message that I'm realizing as we go through this, and the thing that we talked about before, was basically that I think we get so focused on the destination that we forget about the journey. Mm-hmm. And the journey is all about the play. Play your way to the end. Yeah,
when we're stuck in rigid ideas and on the path, it becomes a slog. It becomes, it can become a very defeating journey. But play does lend itself a kind of perspective to a situation and says no, this isn't a slog, this is an adventure. I think that's kind of one of the big things for me with play is just no, this is an adventure. You're just not looking at it right.
Yeah.
And play is the thing that opens up creative solutions as well. That there's been some play going on when you think to yourself or you hear somebody say, oh, I didn't know that you could do that.
Right.
That's one of those little moments when play has kind of inserted itself. It's just oh shit, I didn't know I could do it like that, or you could do it this way or that way. It's yeah, that's play. That's taking something that's been done a certain way or you've been doing a certain way, and then flipping something, incorporating something, messing with it, and suddenly there's this new solution that's better than the old one. Mm-hmm. Which is it's this beautiful kind of I can't quite think of the word right now, but it's this beautiful sort of connection between play and practicality. Mm-hmm. Because play often leads to very practical solutions, more practical than the ones that we already possess.
Yes. The big thing for me, one of my highest values, if not my highest value, is autonomy. It's one of the highest values I have. And, I think about this, and this is something that, I've become more and more enlightened to as I've gone down this path, my journey as an artist, as a human being, as a coach, as a mentor, and everything. But it's what am I really trying to help people do? I want to give them autonomy. I want to give them the ability. I want to help them see that they have the ability to do things the way they want, when they want, where they want, with whom they want. You can always get the job done, but the way you do it is so important. For me, it's one of the most important things. If we have a goal, I don't mind if someone says, okay, we need this done. We need to get this done. I'm great, I'll get it done, but don't tell me how to do it. And don't tell me who to do it with, and don't tell me when to do it or where to do it. You leave those things to me. I'll take care of that, but it'll get done. That's autonomy. That gives me freedom. It gives me power. Right? And so I think everybody out there would love autonomy. I mean, you hear so many people's like, I wish I didn't have to show up to work on Monday. It's like, because you don't have autonomy. Right now, you're told when to work. You're told where to work. You're told who to work with. You don't like your people you're working with, you don't have autonomy. So, so the big thing that I look at is like, okay, well, how do I create autonomy in my life? Right? And so the law of play is about you looking at it and going, okay, well, if you want to embrace play in your life, you start to look at autonomy. You start to look at like, play is like, how do I want to do it? With whom do I want to do it with? Where do I want to do it? When do I want to do it? You get to set everything. Now, you have to hold yourself accountable to your own standards, but then from there, you get to do what you want. And I think when I think about play, like when I think about being a kid, it was like, what game do you want to play today? You can play anything you guys want. You decide what you want to do it, and then you try and play a game. And I think when you actually get full play, what you actually start doing is you start narrowing it a little bit. Because what ends up happening is you go, well, we could play anything. So let's play cops and robbers, or let's play house, or let's play something that's like a specific thing. Because sometimes I think what happens with play is that you have so many options that you're like, you don't even know what to do. Right? And that's where you come like paralyzed by choice type of situation.
Right.
But for the most part, I think most of us don't feel like we have enough options. Right. And so the law of play gives you more options. So that's where I think this law really serves you. It's when you feel limited and you feel like there's only one way to do it and you can't do it that way. The law of play might be a good time to kind of tap into this law we're talking about, because it's a time where you can go, well, maybe there's a different way. Maybe the way I'm doing it isn't the only way.
Yeah, and one of the things too, like with what you're saying, like because there is this sort of because sometimes the problem is that we feel like we don't have choices, which that's a separate law, but like there's never a time when you're without a choice. There's always choices that we get to make, but there is the flip side of sometimes you can be on the other side of that coin where you're like, there are so many choices. There are so many ways to go, and I don't even know where to begin. Well, this is another there's sort of the wisdom of play, but then there's also in a way there's the spirit of play, which is all saying like, it's like, well, I don't know, like I could play with the blocks over there. I could go and color over here, or I could go play tag over here, or I could go and like, there's all of these things going on. You transfer this to however that goes in your your own mind. It's a metaphor, people. But the thing of play is it's like, well, what's the most exciting to you right now? What seems like it would be the most fun thing to do? What is the most maybe not necessarily fun? What is the most exciting pursuit for you now? There's always that element with play, which is always saying it's like, no, that's your direction. Like you've always got to go by that emotion. There is an emotional undercurrent to play to help give you some guidance in this vast sort of expanse of infinite creativity, right? It's saying like, yeah, there's 7 billion people in this world, and everyone's doing something a little bit different than everybody else. Right. So it's like, there's an infinite capacity for choices and for how we do things. There's an infinite possibility for where we could take things. We don't even know, and that's part of what we're talking about, is that it's infinite. So it's like, where do you begin? Well, play, and this is how it actually comes back into presence as well, how those two laws have a relationship with each other. It's like, well, what's the exciting thing right now to pursue? What's the direction that has the most pull to you? And go that way and play around with that for a little while. And then that'll lead to the next thing and to the next thing.
I think when you talk about pull and you're bringing this up with this kind of expanse of options, you really got to, I think play becomes more well executed when you're clear on your values and you're clear on what's important to you and your why and your purpose and things like that. Because if you're feeling quite aimless in life and you don't really have a purpose or a point, I think the way to use play is to just start trying things and having fun and getting connected to like doing life again. Just because, you know, that will help you unlock your purpose and your sense of connection and drive, right? But when you have values and clear goals and ideas of what you want, then you can use play in a different way. You can begin to use play to be like, okay, well, I know I want this, but do I have to go the way I thought I had to go? And where you would use play is where you go, I'm going to go any way but that way. So whatever this way is that I've been trying to go is not working, I'm going to try this way, I'm going to try that way. And these other ways might not work. But what ends up happening is you go down these ways, you find out what doesn't work. And in many ways, by finding out what doesn't work, you actually open up a door to something that does. And then it will become evident to you. But many times you can't see the way that works until you find the many doors that don't.
Yes.
You know, and so like I think what happens is people keep knocking on the same door and they go, well, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. It worked for someone else, why doesn't it work for me? It must be me. It's like, no, it's not you. That door just doesn't open anymore. You need to knock on a few other doors, and eventually you're going to find out one of them opens, and then you can walk through it. And play is like the having fun, knocking on all these doors, trying all these different ways, and being like, okay, eventually one of these are going to work.
Yeah, and it might be a door nobody has ever opened before.
Totally.
I mean, that's kind of the exciting thing that play presents and opens up to us. And something that you brought up in there, which I think is an important thing to cover, is that, you know, play does have many different facets because, you know, I understand can be the argument, you know, we're talking a little bit about, oh, you know, when you're a kid, you kind of just go and you just whatever. It's like, but kids aren't necessarily the best at getting organized and like, you know, getting shit together. and that's a fair point, but it does not mean that there's the absence of play at any point. You know, there is a value because kids are really just playing for fun.
Yeah,
it's all the purpose is fun. I just like, and so you can observe that on a playground or wherever a kid is. They'll just go and like they're doing this for a little while, and then you know you see those moments where it's like you suddenly just see a kid just stop what they're doing and look somewhere else, and then they just book it to this other thing because they're just like, I'm doing that now. Yeah, that's not always the most effective thing for us as we carry on into our adult lives, you know, because then you're just kind of pursuing just like, well, you're just sort of pleasure seeking then. And that time, and that doesn't really necessarily facilitate us moving towards something bigger, us expanding into something bigger. And it's like, that's where purpose comes in, right? It's the purpose that comes in that we find in our lives that give us a sense of direction. But the play is still a very important part of that. You know, like play still works with your purpose, and it wants to be a part of that, and it will help you get to that thing. So it can work in a focused place, and it can work in a completely unfocused place. There's an environment and there's a setting for it no matter where you go. So I just thought you kind of were talking about that, and I thought, oh yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. I just wanted to get into it because like they're just a random, I don't want people to get an idea. It's like, no, just go and, you know,
do whatever.
Just go and do whatever all the time. You know, like that's not necessarily how it is. There is a value to connecting it to a purpose, and there's a value to just play for its own sake as well. You know, there's a time and place for everything. I think this is interesting that this has even come up, because I think it's what we're doing here by having these conversations. We're giving people certain awarenesses of tools that we have discovered across the board for all artists and entrepreneurs and people who are any type of creative, just life-fulfilling purpose type of philosophy, which is basically we're giving you tools so that you don't get stuck and that you have a new way, or a way that's more truthful and authentic to you, that you feel you can go, and to try to give you more joy as you go down that path, or help you find more joy in what you do. And I think play does two really great services, mainly. One is it gives you another option than the options you've been seeing, or more options to try out, which makes life exciting and interesting and whatever.
the other thing that play does is it allows you to enjoy the way you're doing it. And, you know, for me, I found that if I was doing it my way, I enjoyed it. I just didn't like doing it someone else's way. Like, you know, when I had to do something like in school and they were like, oh, do it this way. It's like, I'd be like, this sucks because I don't want to, like, you know, I just feel like I'm just following this line that you told me to follow and it's like a slog and it's like, fine, I'll do it. But like, or I won't. But play is like, I'm going this way. This is what I'm doing. And I love it because I'm doing it. Because it's my choice. Because I decided this is the way I'm going to go. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what's kind of cool about that is I think what play does is it actually ties into what I'm seeing now as kind of a sense of ownership. You know, a sense of connectedness to your way, where it's like you might be doing something that is kind of like tedious work, but you know it's like your way, it's the way you want to do it. Yeah. So it's kind of fun because it's your way, because you chose it and you know it was what you wanted.
Yeah, you that's you bring up, this is something we didn't even discuss at all, but I'm like, yeah, there's something to that play, when we're engaged in play. You know, there's a kind of flow that happens there when we're really engaged in it. And it's when we're in play that our kind of authentic selves actually really comes out. Because it's a way that we're in the unknown, for one, which in past podcasts we've discussed, like the unknown is where real creation occurs, mm-hmm. where actual new stuff happens and new things are created. And play is, let me gather my thoughts here. I had something. Play is this, oh my God.
Well, we're going to the unknown.
We're going into the unknown.
We're going about it our own way.
Oh, yes, authenticity. Okay. This is what I was going for with it. So play is actually allows our authentic selves to kind of come out. Because we're in an unknown place, but when we're in play, we're open, we're receptive, we're not trying to control anything, we're not trying to make anything something. We're just kind of being like, all right, let's try this, let's try that, whatever. That's when we're really getting into who we most authentically are. Because we're not really thinking about, well, how do I look when I'm doing this? Or,
yeah, right.
You know, like there's no time for that. There's no time for that kind of thought to enter when you're in play. Because you have to be so engaged and responsive with whatever the hell it is that you're doing. Because like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I just moving this over here and molding this like that and seeing what happens. Mm-hmm. So play is essential to flow. Is what I'm kind of getting out of this.
That's a really good point. You know, it is, because like flow is kind of in a state of trust, in a state of presence, in a state of being in the process and allowing things to kind of unfold. And I think it's interesting as we go through all this, because there's like awarenesses that I'm having through it all. But what makes, we only get scared when we don't understand something, when we don't know it. And ironically, all of creativity exists in the unknown.
Yeah.
So you'd kind of start to go like, oh, so does that mean that we're scared of creativity? But I don't really fear creativity. I'm like, no, I don't. Creativity's great. I'm like, but it's like, if you don't understand something or know about something, I mean, I don't think we look at the unknown and go like, oh, the unknown's scary. But like, really, like, why are kids scared of the dark? Because you don't know what's out there. It's this, and this is where I think the certainty comes in. People always want to be certain and they want to have control. And I think where play comes in is because you got to go, let's let go of control. Let's let go of a little certainty here. And let's let things kind of unfold. Let's let things happen. And let's see what we find and what we discover. And I think when you're willing to let go of control and certainty for a moment, certainty around outcomes and certainty around results, what ends up happening is you might actually open an opportunity to something that's even better than what you thought you could control for, or what was better than you were even certain of. And so I think where the law of play comes in is, like that whole idea of like leveling up. You kind of got to play to level up. You don't really get to level up if you always play small and certain and controlled. Play is that kind of like where you take a chance, you take a little bit of a risk, you try something out and see if it works. If it doesn't, and the other thing too is we're so scared to make mistakes because the way we were educated, right? Mm-hmm. We're told if we failed or we got something wrong, that meant we were dumb, whatever. But the thing is I think people forget this, is that if you make a mistake, what you do is you go and you acknowledge you made a mistake and then you autocorrect. That's what you do. Yeah. You go, oh, I tripped. Oh, I stumbled. Okay, I'll make sure I don't do that again, or I'll do this a little bit differently. We got to do it. We got to fail. Fail is the autocorrect part. So, like, the thing about play is, like, if you look at play as, like, yeah, I'm playing because every time I make a mistake, I'm going to autocorrect and I'm going to get this better. So, like, when people are trying to control to not make mistakes, you're not allowing yourself to build that skill of autocorrection. That natural skill of, like, you just know how to navigate the world because you stubbed your toe and you realized you were careless, or you dropped a plate or a dish or your drink or spilt or whatever. And you go, oh, well, that was silly. I put my tie in my drink. I leaned over and I didn't realize that could happen. Now I do. Now I don't put my tie in my drink because I know. But I autocorrect. But sometimes you have to make that mistake before you start to figure this stuff out, right? Yeah. And so, like, play is this great thing. It builds this amazing skill of autocorrection, which what is once unknown becomes known, and then you're in a new realm where you might be in an unknown for someone else, but it's known to you because you went out and ventured into it, which I think is where the artist really flourishes.
Yeah. And like, you look at kids and how kids learn. Kids learn through play. Mm-hmm. And that's the first way that new human beings in the world learn. Is through play. But we forget to do that along the way. I can't remember who said it, but there was someone who said, the creative adult is the child who survived.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that's a real tasty one. And this is, like, I think that this is really important stuff because, the way that I'm seeing the industries going ahead and the way that the world is shaping ahead, creativity is becoming such a critical component, and play and creativity are so linked to each other. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times, if you look at so many of these sort of quote unquote success stories, these people who did the rags to riches, and their stories are almost always have this component of, I did this, didn't work. I did this, it didn't work. And then I did this, and that didn't work, right? But then something happens, right? It was a thing of entering the unknown. There was a play that was going on. There was a play, whether they were necessarily aware of it. So, some of my favorite sort of success stories and like, if you want to look at it in a material sense or a monetary sense, some of my favorite rich people are people like, Richard Branson, and, even though he's kind of socially awkward, Elon Musk, or, someone like Tony Robbins even. It's like, these are all people who have an immense sense of play. There's always a huge amount of play that's going on with them. Branson looks like he's just been having the time of his life for decades now. Yeah. And he's still doing it. He's still just doing all kinds of different stuff. And he's in a position now where he can just go like, screw it, I'll just try anything. Mm-hmm. He's just playing for fun now. But he's straddling that thing of playing fun, but also playing for purpose. There's all of these stories that all of us can probably think of someone that we maybe say like, oh yeah, look how they did it, or how did they get to where they got to, and it's just like play. Mm-hmm. Almost in every single case, I'm sure.
I think, for the person who doesn't feel like they have autonomy or freedom in their life, I think, when you feel like, well, it's easy for you to say, you get to do what you want when you want, you have this lifestyle, or it's easy for Richard Branson. He has all this money. He can do what he wants. And it's like, well, granted, people do have to do some things to take care of themselves so that they can figure out how to create freedoms and autonomies in their life, because, at the end of the day, yeah, we all got to eat. We all got to make sure we stay warm enough and all of this stuff, right? And we take care of our responsibilities. But I think, there can be play in everything, and play's it's like a skill I think you got to build. And it's something that, I think about, it's funny. I said this quote to you, and I'm just going to read it because it was just an off the cuff comment.
It was good. And yeah, I wanted us at some point to have this come up.
I said to Evan, I was talking to Evan a bit about my story in my life. And I was like, I think that's where I got stuck. I stopped playing. And I think that's where people are. I think that's where we get stuck. We just stop playing. We just stop playing in life. And, stopping playing was what got you there. Stopping playing was what got you there.
Yes.
Playing is what's going to get you out.
Yeah.
So don't say I'm going to wait to play. You got to play now. That's the way out of this. If you continue to do what you do, you will continue to be stuck. Yeah. So you got to kind of, and that's why Evan and I think are trying to encourage you guys to say is just play. You said too, and that's what led me to that comment. You said, sometimes we do these laws, and I go, if I just did a little more of this in my life, everything would be fine. I'm like, and that's, I think, what spurred on what I said, but that's so true. It's if I just played more, I'd solve so many problems.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably enjoy ourselves a lot more.
Yeah.
This podcast is play.
Totally.
This is like one of my weekly play sessions, Brandon. As we get together and we riff on this stuff, we step into the unknown, we play with ideas.
Yeah.
That's really what is there play. This is the thing. This is what's amazing about play is that play is in operation no matter where you are in what you do. It can always be called on. Mm-hmm. It can always be brought into the picture, and it will always enhance something. It won't always work, but it will always lead to something that probably will.
What's interesting? Before we started this podcast episode, I honestly don't think I understood what play was. Before we started today talking about the law of play, I thought I understood it. But then we started having this conversation before podcast and now on podcast. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I feel like I'm actually getting play now. Because I feel like I did it in my life. But I didn't really consciously, I wasn't totally always aware that I was doing it. I think the thing is I just have such a high value on autonomy and freedom that it forced me to push myself to play because I just have been so dead set on my life of doing things my way that, when you do things your way, you kind of end up playing because you end up going, well, no, I'm not doing it your way. I don't care if it works. I'm going to do it my way. And then if it doesn't work, you're like, I don't care. It was my way. But that was a form of play because it was your way, And so what I'm realizing, though, is my favorite part about play is not just the options that it creates for me, but it's actually my experience of doing something because it creates fun in the situation where you try something out and you kind of see if it works and then it doesn't really work. And you're like, okay, I'm going to try this. And then maybe that doesn't. And then the next thing does. And then you find a way through. And then you play in the next realm that you just entered into. And pretty soon when you're being playful enough, you're so in flow. And you're so you're vibrating. You're at this, and people are almost like, "How are you doing what you're doing?" And it's I didn't even realize. I'm like, "Wow!" I was just whenever I did anything really incredible in my life, I was just in a real deep place of play. You know? Yeah. It's been kind of eye opening for me. It's very very cool.
No, for me too. This is just there's so many dimensions to this that I never even really considered. And that's why we have these conversations is, it's not just for you who are listening out there. This is actually just for us.
Okay. So what we talked about, we got a few other things we want to talk about. Did we cover give? How much give is in play? The room, the flexibility.
It's play does. Yeah. Let's dive into this. Cause there's there was one other thing that I had in my mind, but this all kind of ties together,
right?
Which is, yes, play gives us that slack. It gives us that give.
Yeah.
It gives us that freedom and flexibility to move around, so that we're not stuck. We don't limited.
Yeah.
You know,
we're not on a, like, I like the analogy, and we're not on a tight leash.
Yeah.
Because the give is like, yeah, okay, like, you know, if you're walking a dog or something like that and you have the dog on the leash, if the dog is always by your side with the tight leash and you never let it walk off and explore at all, I mean, what kind of life, what kind of experience is that, right? But some people, you know, they let their dogs kind of wander a little, and you know, you let the dog off the leash and the dog goes, okay, well, my owner, I can go this far, and then I kind of come back and everybody feels good. You know, the dog gets a sense for that, right? But like, I think of the give, like, well, if you're always put yourself on a tight leash, like, what kind of experience of freedom are you giving yourself to explore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, and this in particular analogy is like, what are you calling me, a dog? It's like, well, we're not just calling you the dog, we're also calling you the owner too.
You're both at the same time.
We're both at the same time to ourselves. It's like how much this is, oh God, it's tied to permission as well. Law of permission. It's like, you know, the permission that we give ourselves.
Yeah, right.
You know, play is very much about permission. How much do you permit yourself to play?
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to cover into, which is I think this is related to, is, you know, to me, the law of play is also, I mean, there's kind of a little bit of a mischievous element to play in a good way. But it's kind of like this little thing that sometimes wakes us up, just kind of gives us a little tap on the face, you know, and just says, hey, this isn't so serious.
Yeah, right.
You know, like, this isn't so serious. It's all right. Everything's okay. You're going to be fine. Yeah. I know you don't know what's going on right now or how this is going to work itself out, but don't worry. It's going to. You know, like, it's kind of this, you know, like the little, what was it, like Puck? He was from like A Midsummer Night's Dream or something like that. He was the little, you know, I can't remember what creature he was.
Oh, I don't recall.
He was like, you know, he got like the goat legs and the human body, and plays the little flute and stuff. Yeah. You know, plays a little bit like that. You know, it's just kind of like meandering around and like, and can just kind of shake you up a little bit. You know, can be lovingly hard at times. You know, where it's just like, hey, wake up.
Yeah, you know, the seriousness. I think that's. You know, I might even say that being too serious is kind of the antithesis to play. It's like the greatest opponent. It's like, why is everything have to be such a big deal all the time? Like, maybe this isn't like the end of the world. Like, maybe you don't have to live your life like everything is like the highest stakes. I mean, you know, like, I think people live like that, though. They're like, oh, if I say this joke and no one laughs, it's going to be embarrassing. Or I make this film and no one likes it. It's like, nobody's going to care, honestly. Like, maybe people don't like it in the moment, but they're going to forget about it, and it's going to be gone. Look, I went to a film festival, and we were watching a film that, you know, I was kind of like co-producer on, and I'm sitting there, and the film ends, it's a short film, and the film ends, and these two guys in front of me go, that's the worst piece of shit I've ever seen. Listen, I'm a hired screenwriter right now. I'm working in the film industry. Most of the people in that film festival are not. So, and they thought my film was a piece of shit. So, that goes to say that, you know, you got to try. You
also try. Every now and then,
and no one's gonna remember. No one's gonna know.
Yeah.
Like, no one knows that, like, I was a part of it or whatever. It's gone. You know, I remember because whatever. It's funny to me. But like, I just think it's a great thing. I mean, that I got to experience that. I mean, it was a hard experience at the moment, but it was like, I laugh about it now. It was like, yeah, like, I made a film because this is so good. When I talk to people about helping them make films, it's like, one of our films won like over 20 something awards, one single film. So it's like, I can tell people, yeah, I have a film that's won over 20 awards. And I can say I also had a film that was at a film festival and people said it was an absolute piece of shit. So that gives me humility, right? Because, you know, I think the thing is we always like to like look at these moments where the person's holding up their award or the thing and they're like, oh, it's so great. It must be so great to be you. And it's like, yeah, but that came from making some pieces of shit, you know? And some people don't even have to make a piece of shit to get there. I unfortunately did. Unfortunately.
Well, I mean,
you know?
I think everybody has their moments. Like, you know, you just look at like years back, you know, like Halle Berry, 1 year, she wins the Oscar for Monsters Ball. The next year, she won the Razzie. The Razzie?
Yeah, Razzie.
And he said, yeah, she won the Razzie for worst performance for Catwoman.
Catwoman, yeah.
You know? It's like, that's just how it goes sometimes, you know? But it's just not so damn serious.
Yeah.
You know, and I say this all the time to people, where it's one of my favorite Alan Watts quotes, is he says, it's like, take life sincerely, but not seriously. You know, and I just have always loved that distinction there. It's like, no, like, take it sincerely. So, like, put effort and passion and care into it, but don't lose sleep over this. Don't lose your mind. Don't just make your life a steaming pile of shit because you're taking it so seriously. You know, there's another, it's a longer quote by and I can't say it correctly, but by Aldous Huxley, who said, lightly, lightly. You know, it's like, when on your path in your life, travel lightly, because you will get sucked down if you take things too seriously, if you move with too much weight, if you move too seriously through your life, you'll get sucked under. Right? So it seems counterintuitive, you know, this idea of play. And I think that this is where we have a big challenge around this concept, is that play seems like it's a waste of time. Play doesn't seem like it's of value. And I think this is maybe where I don't know how much longer we're going to continue to talk about this, but for me, it's like, this is one of the biggest issues and things we have to confront, is this idea that play has no value. I think along the way in our lives, we start to buy into this idea that it's like, no, play was from the time you were basically born till the time that you were maybe about
grade 2, 3, 4,
grade 2, 3, and then there's
maybe
a different kind of play that you're allowed to do until you're about 14. And then you can do a different kind of play until you're about...
You can play sports.
Yeah. And then you can play somewhat until like 21, 22, whatever. But now you got to get your shit together, and life is serious. And you don't get to play anymore. Right? And because it's not given any sense of value, even though most of us still retain some sense of play. There are things that we do in our adult lives, like I said, like problem solving. Problem solving is a kind of play. We just don't look at it that way. We look at it from, we call it problem solving, instead of like play solving. Instead of like, hey, let's try and find a solution. And there are people who are like that, who in the face of a problem just be like, all right, well, what can we do? Like, you can just see like their eyes light up, and they're like, all right, let's find a solution. Because there's still an element of play that they're engaged with there, and suddenly it's like, it's not it's not really a problem. It's kind of like just an exciting challenge. It's something to be solved, a mystery to be unveiled. This is the way that this is maybe kind of the language of play. How play can shift our perspective. It's like, no, it's not a problem to be solved. It's a mystery to be revealed. It's there's a gift to be found. We just don't know what it is. And now we just have to find a way there. And it requires us to dive into that unknown place. And so it gets a lot of our fears, our emotions going. And so we kind of just make it a bad thing, right? So I think play is really a great perception shifter for us. And it's time that we start, maybe you're not in this position, but maybe you are. It's time to start giving play a place in your life again. Because play is actually, as you were discussing earlier, it's probably the lack of play is the reason why you're stuck in whichever way you're stuck. Something has become too serious in your life. Something has become made too important in your mind, and it's become a weight, and you feel stuck. You feel like you have to just keep hammering at the wall with your head until hopefully this thing just breaks open somehow. Mm-hmm. When really there's play that's just there. It's like, no, stop hitting your head against the wall. Stop hitting your head against the wall. Come over here. Come over here.
Yeah.
There might be a way over here. Maybe not. But if it's not over here, then we'll go over here. Like, there's lots of different places that we can go. But we can't start to find those things unless we let go of our needs and fear, I'd say our fear to control, so that we can open up to an unknown and into the play that will give us our answers and solutions.
I think I think the other thing too people can kind of consider with this, right, is I think you brought up such a great point about play not being a waste of time. I also want to say, like, how bad are these consequences that you're scared are going to happen? Like, when it comes to like play, right? Because I mean, why don't people do it? Well, they don't do it because one, okay, they think just the idea of play is a waste of time. But then if they go, okay, well, I don't even want to try because if I try, this thing's going to happen. I mean, how bad is that really? I look at consequences in terms of this. I try to go like, okay, well, is it going to get me hurt, or is anyone else hurt, or is it like a physically threatening thing? And I kind of make sure I always, like, I don't have to, it doesn't take me long to figure that one out, but I gauge that one. Like, if I want to do this thing where it's kind of risky physically and I could fall or hurt myself or hurt somebody else or something, should I do it? And I was like, well, no, that's not a risk I want to take. I think that we need to be mindful not to do that because, but, if you're worried about being embarrassed or some social consequence or what people will think of you or something like that, that's not a real consequence. That's a whole lot of bullshit. And I just want to say that straight up because, look, I'm adamant on this. And this is what pisses me off about the education system. And I'm going to go on about this because here, look, we're human beings. We're a herd animal. We are designed to be in a community and work together. And we have to figure out how to do that if we want to thrive. That is the bottom line. It has to happen. We can only do so much alone. When it comes to play, you're not alone. You don't go off. You don't have to always go off and play on your own. What I used to do is I used to knock on my friends' doors and say, hey, can Robbie come out and play? Can Mike come out and play? And I was a little kid and my mom just said, go knock on their door. Go ask them if they want to play. And I would rally the whole block together. And we would play these games of tag and cops and robbers and all this stuff. And I just like, it was powerful. And, it's no surprise that I became a filmmaker later because that's all a filmmaker does. A filmmaker calls people up and says, hey, I'm making a film. You want to play, basically? You want to come play imagination with me?
Yep.
You hold the camera, you hold the sound, whatever, right? And everybody's game, and we have a blast. Sometimes you're on these sets, they're so fucking serious, and you're just like, nobody's having fun, and this thing's a piece of crap. And like, you can't even laugh at the fact that it's a piece of crap, because it's just like, everyone's stressed out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is like, whatever, you go out, you do the thing, you try it out, you learn some things, you get together with people. And I'm going to say my part about the education system. The education system pits us against each other, starts giving us grades and rating us and saying this person's better than that person, this person's smarter, this person's cool, this person isn't cool. And we create this weird little fucked up class system in how we exist. And it messes up our play. Because like, now you can't play anymore because you're not cool. And now someone else is better than you because they got it right and you didn't. Which is nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just nonsense. I mean, we need to kind of for anybody who's gone through the education system that we have, you need to literally kind of go like, everything I learned is full of shit. Like everything's bullshit. And you need to restart. You literally, and this is the exercise that I'm going to give to everybody for play. I'm going to say this. Go back to when you were in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, wherever you were, where you were still kind of playful and feeling like free, right? And then look at your life and go where did I stop? Like, what stopped me from doing that? Like, look at it. It's like, well, was I trying to be cool? Was I trying to fit in? Did I decide that I was stupid or that something like this? Those were all the things that killed your play. And now you have to heal every one of those. And that might be some work. but you got to go through and heal every single one of those things. And you got to just basically go like, okay, well, if I fail, it doesn't mean I'm dumb. If I embarrass myself, it doesn't mean I'm not cool. If I do this or that, because that's really what's running. Like, let's all be honest. You don't want to make the mistake because you're scared. People are going to think you're an idiot. People are going to think you're not cool. People are going to not accept you. It's not true. It's just not true. I'm going to tell you that right up. Because people, as a herd animal, we need people to do certain things. We need each other to follow rules to some degree and kind of like keep each other safe. It's the only way we're going to work together. But when it comes to expression, nobody has a say over that about you unless you're doing something that's going to like threaten people or make it difficult for them to do their life. If you start driving erratically on the road, that makes a problem for all of us. So don't do that. But like, if you're going to go and express yourself and make a joke, that doesn't mess up our day, right? The rest of us can survive and we don't laugh. So what? Try again. You know what I mean? And if we're your friends, you know, we're not going to hold it against you. You know, I have one friend and he cracks terrible jokes all the time. And it's just like, but he's getting better, you know, but he tries. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? You know, he tries. But he's getting better.
Yeah.
He's starting to get feedback. He's going, oh, they laughed at this. They didn't laugh at that. And he gets better. Starts to, you know. And the thing is like...
Is this about me?
Yeah, you're the guy. No, you're not the guy. But, you know, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing I want to kind of point out is that I think what ends up happening is in a big way, we make social things too big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, we have to drive safe on the road. We have to not steal from each other. That's the only way we'll exist as a community. But like when it comes to like expressing ourselves and cracking a joke and talking to someone you're interested in or trying out a piece of art, like that doesn't interrupt anyone else's day. They can look away from it if they don't like it, you know? And if they're going to be walking around judging you, then that's them judging themselves doing it. It's not you. There's a quote I want to read, but I want to hear what you have to say about what I just went off about.
Oh.
If you have anything.
I mean...
Well,
there's
look, you don't have to. It's no big deal. But let me read this quote because, you know, this was something to me that, you know, I stumbled across like a year ago or two, and it stood out to me in a big way. The quote is this, and I don't know who said it, but this is the quote. When someone undermines your dreams, predicts your doom, or criticizes you in any way, remember, they're telling you their story, not yours. And I think that's a really great quote because it's like, you know, if you want to have dreams, if you want to have stuff that you're going for, you know, you can have all sorts of time. People are going to come around and they're going to say, oh, that's not really going to happen. That's impossible, you know, or, you know, maybe you should get serious or maybe you should be realistic or whatever thing they're going to say. And I think these types of things, they kill our dreams, you know. It's like, it's realistic only to them because they live in the known. They live in a world that's small. When you start venturing into play and you go into the unknown, you're going to discover things that they haven't seen. And so I would only ever take advice from somebody that you're willing to switch shoes with, at least, if not forever, for a day. If you won't even switch shoes with them for a day because their life looks so small to you, then that's not a good person to be taking advice from because that's where you're going to end up. Go take advice from someone who it'd be interesting to try them out for a day or a week or whatever to see how their life is and listen to what they're saying because they're seeing the world in a way that Dream Killer over here isn't seeing. So, you know, and I think this is the problem. I think this is the part of play. Like, it's the Dream Killers that crush play.
Yeah.
You know, the dreamers embrace play.
Yeah.
And we've already discussed that.
And this is, yeah, absolutely. And this is, you know, the show's called Way of the Artist. And it's an ethos, it's a philosophy, you know, it as from, you know, an artist kind of perspective. And how an artist sort of approaches the world, which is, yeah, it's a conscious decision to live life in a certain kind of way. And to me, it doesn't matter necessarily what you do, because an artist is anybody who chooses a life of creativity, and no matter what form that takes place, That can be, yes, that can be a direct getting into one of the quote unquote arts, or it can be being an entrepreneur, you know, or raising a family. And there's lots of different ways that this can unfold. But what it requires is a dive into the unknown over and over and over and over and over again. That's kind of what an artist has signed up for. If we want to look at it the traditional sense, an artist has signed up to create all of these different works, and each one is an unknown. At some point in time, it is an unknown, and it's a willingness to keep going back to that place, to keep going back to that place, because it's kind of scary, but it's also kind of exciting, and it's also the most rewarding space to go into. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. A lot of people aren't willing to make that conscious step into that. And that's not a judgment. It's not a judgment. But it is not their place to make a judgment on what you're doing with your life, about the decision that you're making in your life. Mm-hmm. That is your decision, so own it. Own that that's the life that you have chosen, and that it is the best life for you. Is the life
you chose it.
Because you chose it. Yeah. Not because somebody else chose it and because somebody else thinks that, you know, you should go a different way. That's their path. That's their path.
And, you know, another thing, just to kind of comment on what you said, because nobody should ever tell you how to live. You know, this is a life of autonomy. You know, this is a life of you deciding what matters and whatever. I mean, even if there's laws and rules and whatever, I mean, you got to decide at the end of the day, like, you know, you can follow rules because you're scared you're going to face consequences for not following them, or you can follow rules because you actually believe that, like, you know, you don't want to endanger people, or you want to make sure that you consider it. Like, in the early moments of our life, we might not understand why a rule's there, and that's might be why it's good that there's a rule. But as you get older and you mature, you know, think critically about these rules and about these guidelines. Like, you know, are these things, why are they there? Like, you know, you can speed, right? It's a law not to speed. You get a speeding ticket. But the reason why you don't speed is you could not speed because you're worried that you're going to get a ticket, or you could not speed, or you could limit your speed because you recognize the fact that if you lose control of this car and it hurts somebody, that's on you. And so, you know, I think as you work through rules and you work through what you have to do or what you think you have to do, look at, like, why are you doing that? What's the value being upheld, and like, what are you upholding, right? And what's the thing there? And I think when it comes to play, like, you know, I just look at things from this place at this point. I just go, okay, these are my values. I value autonomy. I value freedom. I value, I value human life. I value having fun, living a life of purpose. I value loyalty and honesty and integrity and authenticity. I have some other values, but those are my big ones. And so when I look at what I do, I go, okay, well, do these meet these values? And then from there, if it meets those values, I have a lot of room to play. But there's a source, right? You're the source. And I think, like, the thing is like, when people are playing, it's like, you know, it's not like you can do anything you want now, because you're your guide, you know? You're your own parent. You decide what's, like, appropriate and what's inappropriate. But, like, I think what I'm pushing on right now is I'm saying, like, don't be so appropriate socially, but maybe you need to be more appropriate, like, with certain things about, like, how you're treating others and how you're being in the world. You know, maybe you're being careless. Mm-hmm. But, like, when it comes to play is not just carelessness, especially as an adult. It's very careful. It's full of care. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that when you know what you value, it becomes very easy to guide and live your life and kind of do this and try things out. So I think, like, you know, people get kind of confused about all this stuff, right? It's like, yeah, you know, just like, and the other thing too is have fun. I mean, God, who knows how long you're going to live for? You know, who knows, right? So let's just do this and like, you know, use play in your journey wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I'm saying, just use it. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's wrap this bad boy up here. The beer we've been drinking, which again, we're not sponsored by any of these beers. They just fuel the conversation. This is from Bomber Brewing in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And this is just called their ESB, their extra special bitters, honoring the classic British ESB and celebrating the innovations of the Yakima Valley. Our extra special bitter seamlessly blends BC-grown barley and the crystal malts of Great Britain with North America's most aromatic hops. So there you go.
There you go. There's some beer.
We've been drinking it.
It spurred on a good conversation.
It sure did.
Do you want to read out that thing, or should we read that out?
Which thing were you thinking
the
of
quote,
reading out?
which is, I'll read it. It's play is the muse that joyfully prods us to let go of our need to control. Stop taking things so seriously, and instead to venture out and to stop worrying so darn much. Everything can be turned into play from a new perspective.
I think that's a lot of what we were talking about.
I think so. I think we nailed that. All right. Well, I don't know. Any life wisdoms?
Yeah,
to leave people with?
just closing comments is just I just posed the question of where can you incorporate more play into your life right now? Where can you do that? Where can you just inject a little bit more lightness, a little bit more flexibility and room in your life? What place just feels stifling right now? What area of your life just feels stifling? And how might you just kind of give yourself a little bit more breathing room that way, That's it, man. Give it value. It's important. It's important. It's important. I'm going to say it 3 times.
But don't take it so seriously.
Don't take it so seriously. It's important that you play. You understand?
Yeah.
That's it. This has been a terrific one. I've enjoyed this a lot.
All right. Well, I like what you said, especially about play not being a waste of time. So I just want to leave people with really stop looking at play as a waste of time and start seeing the benefits in it and how it can serve you in your life. And if you want a quick crash course, one, it's going to make your life a lot more fun. And the other thing, it's going to give you a lot more options. So why don't you just think about what that could do for your life if you were having more fun and you had more options? How might you start living?
Thanks for listening to the show. If you got something out of this, if you feel it improved your life or your journey in any way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode.
You can also support us on Patreon, where we have tons of great bonuses. You are the ones that make the show possible and help us to thrive. Thank you for joining us.